In the early 1900s, there was a remote mountain in the Andes, known to the locals as El Muerto, the dead one. Not because it was deadly, but because no one believed it could be climbed. The terrain was too unstable, the storms were too sudden, and the paths were too broken up. For decades, every expedition failed before it even reached halfway. Then came a young climber named Thomas. Let me tell you about Tom. He wasn't the strongest. He ain't had the fanciest gear. All he had was a backpack, some water, and a journal. The journal was filled with notes, maps, and failures of every single person that had attempted the expedition before him. Where one might see wasted efforts, our boy Tommy saw a blueprint. Where others saw failure, our boy Tommy saw feedback. He studied their steps, their setbacks, their wrong turns, and used what others left behind to eventually reach the summit. And Thomas reached the summit not because he ignored the past, but because he built upon it. Now take a moment and think about your life. Maybe your past feels like failed attempts, missteps, pain. But what if it's not something to regret? What if it's your map? What if the things you've gone through aren't just stories of survival, but tools to build something greater? Let's talk about how to build a life you love using the past that most people try to forget. Have you ever looked at your life and thought, man, I should be further along by now? It's a quiet frustration that most people carry, especially those who worked hard, tried their best, and still feel like something's missing. Life just ain't getting. And the question that often haunts us is why? Sometimes the reason we feel stuck isn't because we lack talent or motivation, but because we're still carrying stories from our past that we haven't fully understood or used. But here's the truth. Your past doesn't have to be your prison. In fact, it can be your power. When we look back at our past, we often see two things: mistakes, missed opportunities. But what if the past isn't something to run from? Think of your life like a mosaic. Every shard, every broken piece, every mistake, every success is a part of the masterpiece of you. You just haven't stepped back far enough to see the pattern yet. Let me tell you about Jason. Jason grew up in a household that was chaotic. Financial instability, constant arguments. At 16, Jason dropped out of school and was labeled a problem. But years later, Jason started a nonprofit that helped kids from unstable homes learn emotional resilience. And the only reason that Jason was able to do this was because he understood the pain. He understood the pain and flipped it into purpose. He didn't ignore the past, he used it, and you can too. Take a moment and consider, what's one moment from your past that hurt you deeply, but might hold a hidden lesson or strength? And the reason I pose that question to you is because here's where the real work begins. If you don't examine your past, it will control your present. And it won't control it by force. It will control it by patterns. Have you noticed certain cycles in your life? The way you always second guess your successes? The relationships that keep ending the same way? The fear that continually whispers, don't try, you're just gonna fail again? That's not a coincidence, that's conditioning. And you move through life trying to better yourself, but you take you everywhere you go. So it's time to decode these patterns. A 3-step way to start. First of all, write it down. Journaling is clarity on paper. You get to see your thoughts. Number 2, identify emotional moments. Identify the times you felt rejected, overlooked, empowered, maybe proud. And number 3, ask yourself, what did I learn from this? Every experience we go through in life teaches us something. Name it and own it. I read a story about Elizabeth. Growing up, Elizabeth was a chatty child. And it was kind of just adopted in the family as this is Lizzie, this is her personality. One day, Elizabeth is in school and her 5th grade teacher tells her that she needs to be quiet because she talks too much. Something changed in Elizabeth that day. And for years, she continued to silence her voice in rooms where she had something to say. She carried this from the 5th grade into adulthood. And she carried it until one day she realized her voice wasn't the problem. The environment was. Once she rewrote the story in her brain, she began to show up differently and built a platform using her gift of gab, all because she began to understand the moment of her past. And if you're going to build your ideal future, it's important that we move from regret to insight and from insight to intention. So you've looked back, you've learned, now what? Once you move from regret to insight and insight to intention, it's now time to build. Not randomly, not by chasing trends, but begin to build based on who you are. What do you value more than anything? What kind of energy do you want to bring into every room you come into? What's the legacy that you want to leave behind? This is how you build goals that stick, because they move from being rooted in insecurity to being rooted in identity. So ask yourself, what's one goal you can set that aligns with your values and not your ego? And while we're talking about building a life you love, there's one part that people skip. The life you love will require discomfort at times. Not because life is cruel, but because growth never happens in a hammock. You will face resistance. Your old habits, oh yeah, they're gonna try to drag you back. Doubt may even show up wearing the voice of the people that you trust the most. But remember, growth isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. This is the importance of practicing mindfulness and being present, learning to hear your thoughts before you just obey them, practicing soul care and not just self-care. I'm talking reflection, solitude, and connection, and ultimately welcoming discomfort, knowing that discomfort is a teacher. It reveals what you still need to heal and where you're ready to grow. The next time something challenges you, don't react, reflect, pause and ask, what is this moment trying to grow in me? And then respond. If you pause and reflect, you're giving yourself the wherewithal to respond in the appropriate way, in the way that is going to help the situation and not make it worse. So what does the life you love really look like? It's not just about aesthetics. It's not a perfect house, a 6-figure business, 1 million followers. All of that is great. But what is it really about? It's about waking up feeling aligned. It's about doing work that matters. It's about waking up with joy, laughing. It's about owning your scars and saying, yeah, that happened, but it shaped me. It didn't break me. It's about celebrating your wins, the small ones, the quiet ones, the ones that no one sees but you. It's about building relationships with people who reflect your light and not doubt. And it's about living a life of gratitude, all the while knowing that gratitude turns what you have into enough and what you dream of into a possibility. And I leave you with this. Your past is not your excuse. It's your evidence. It's evidence that you made it through. It's evidence that you've been growing, even in seasons where it looks like you didn't make any progress. You don't need to become someone else to build a life that you love. You just need to become more honest, more intentional, more aligned, more you. And if you're bold enough, I want you to repeat after me. I will stop running from my past. I will use it. I will build something beautiful. I will live a life I love because I already have the tools. The next chapter is waiting, and you're ready to write it. Always remember that growth is a journey. It's not a destination. I'm in it with you, and I'll see you on the next one.